Life Audio.
Today on Talk About That, John misquotes yet another popular saying and wants to die at age 100 in the most dramatic way possible. Meanwhile, I argue that tearing it off quick like a Band-Aid is terrible advice and tell you how to inform your neighbor that their cat has died. Plus a conversation about vulnerability, worry, and independence, and what the Bible really means by daily bread. Today's episode is not sponsored by running. It's like walking, but it makes your lungs burn. But first, a word from our actual sponsor.
Bantertown, here we go again. Let's talk about that. I'm John, this is Johnny.
Do you think people that have listened for a long time, or not, maybe haven't, they don't know what they think the show is called Bantertown when you do that?
Nah, they don't think that.
I think
they
you
literally have to push a button on their podcast.
I think you wished that you had called the show Bantertown.
That's a great question. I wonder if it would be a different level of success by now.
How about the Johnny Show with John? What do you think about that?
That probably would take off better. But I'm at peace with my mediocrity and the mediocrity that I bring and cast over your entire career through this podcast.
Yeah, that was a nice start.
Are you at peace with my mediocrity?
I wouldn't call it peace.
I'd call it rage.
I was telling, we had lunch with some friends, and I was telling them at lunch that Curry and I have such a snarky sense of humor, and now when we say something heartfelt to each other, the other person, like if she says, I just want you to know, like, I know it's been a hard week, and I just appreciate you so much, and you've always been there for me, and I just love you so much. And then I will say, that's what makes this so hard.
It's so dark. I love it.
Like I've chosen that moment to break it off.
Yeah,
I really wish you hadn't said that, because that's what I wanted to talk to you about.
I was watching, that's what Michael Scott did when he was dating Pam's mom.
Yeah.
Takes her out for the big birthday lunch, and
Yeah.
realizes how old she is,
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, look, I'm sorry to have to do this, but I can't in good conscience date you anymore because it violates the boundaries and the principles that Pam have and I have as coworkers. Of course, now Pam's come around. She's like,
right.
No, Michael, it's fine. You make Mom very happy. And he was like, well, I hope that you keep that same attitude for what I'm about to say next. And he dumps her anyway because she's old.
Man. What's old? Yeah, I'm trying to think, like, if I was ever out there again, would there be because that's the thing, I'm old now. You see people my age, they're getting like they're newly single for whatever reason.
Right.
They're widowed, they're newly divorced. And it's such a strange thing to see your high school friends. They go, yeah, I'm on the apps now. And you go, ooh,
yeah,
what in the world?
But where else would you meet somebody?
I don't know. That used to be the thing, is like, it was weird to say, like, it's a computer dating thing.
Right.
When we were like teenagers, that was starting out. Computer dating. They find
you met
somebody
him online, really?
Yeah. It was so weird.
Yeah.
You go, this poor loser. Now it's like 80% of marriages or something.
Yeah.
It started with some online interaction.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know.
I
would not. So that would be me. I would be like how old is he? Ugh. Oh, there's no way. I'm hanging on to Curry like grim death.
Oh, goodness.
Which isn't far off, by the way.
Well,
I'm telling you what, bro. I don't feel. Yeah, I feel
You're
older.
doing fine,
no,
man.
I'm doing okay.
Don't do this. Listen, my wife and I have this argument all the time. Don't do this.
Are you going to say age is just a number?
No, I'm not.
Oh,
I'm going to say, though, that the people. So I have a grandmother who's like 92.
Yeah.
And she is the most delightfully stubborn person I've ever met in my life. Mm-hmm. She is a force.
Right.
Like Grandma.
So you think that's going to be me?
Is a force. And now you can't tell her anything.
Yeah.
But she's sweet as pie. But also, like, if she doesn't want to do something, it's just like, no, I'm not going to work the remote this way or whatever. Like, she's not going to do it.
Yeah.
So it can be infuriating for those who are trying to take care of her. At the same time, Laura and I will leave and we'll be like, I just want to be like Grandma. Like, I want to have that.
Right. Still have some fire.
Like a life. I'm not saying this in a non-religious way, but there's a force of life to her. Like, no, she is a thing.
Right. She's not waiting to die somewhere.
Right. And she's all over people, like her friends who are in their 80s or whatever. She's like, they keep acting like they're old. And I'm like, man, it's, and then she gets out in the yard still and does stuff. I mean, dangerously.
Yeah.
But I mean, she's living, you know.
Right.
So I'm like, we got to stop thinking.
There used to be a Nick Swardson bit about that, comedian Nick Swardson. He used to have a bit about that. Like, he can't wait to be an old person because you'll finally have money to do all the things that you wanted to do. Yeah. And he goes, I want to go out hardcore. Like, I want to be like, how did Nick die? He flipped his vet. You know, just be 80 and just go way too fast in a Corvette.
Yeah.
You know.
Hey.
That's I'll
tell her that, like, we'll be 100 with our minds and bodies intact. And then when we know it's time, it'd be like a whole Thelma Louise thing. You know what I'm saying? Just one big literal felled swoop.
Yeah.
And
it's fell. It's just fell. One fell swoop.
I think it's a felled swoop.
Mm-mm.
Are you sure?
Pretty sure.
Oh, wow.
Aren't you the author?
I knew that was coming.
It's one fell swoop.
Felled swoop.
Not one felled. There's probably both versions of it online because people say it wrong.
I'm seeing one fell swoop.
Yeah, one fell swoop.
Wow.
Man, did you please tell me you didn't use that phrase in a book?
No, that's why I keep getting rejected.
Did you use it in a book? It's the name of the new proposal that you...
It's one
felled swoop. Oh, man. You're in a lot of trouble.
Anywho.
Well...
And then imagine how much easier it'd be for Sadie.
Yeah.
Like, look.
She gets to say, hey, I don't understand why this would be easier for Sadie. Because her 100-year-old parents went over a cliff together. Well, that's not traumatic.
She's now 70.
Yeah. She's like... Finally.
She doesn't have to wait.
Finally, they're gone. Let me go down in this rubble and see if I can't sort through. You'll give her the IDs and stuff. You'll be like, they're not going to be able to identify our bodies. So here's some photos. Here's our dental records.
But imagine she right then gets all the inheritance if there's any left. Right. Because that last 20 years, I plan on spending a lot.
Oh, right.
And then she doesn't have to mourn twice. It's just all in one big fell swoop.
Yeah, you know what's funny, and my father-in-law listens to the podcast sometimes. So if you're listening, Dad, I love you. But you know, it's interesting when my mother-in-law passed. They were married over 50 years, 56 years, and we kind of thought we were worried about Dad. Because he was her caregiver for the last couple of years, even quit his job finally at the college to care for her. Yeah. Worked until he was 81. And so we thought, gosh, is he going to just wander into the woods once Mom is gone? And it's been so cool to see his personality kind of bounce back to what it was before he fell into that funk of caregiver mode, which is great because he did the right thing. He cared for his wife. Yeah. It's what you're supposed to do. But it's just so draining of a thing to go through, and we all go through it. Or if you're alive long enough, you hope to go through it, because that's what love is all about. But it's interesting to watch him he started going to the senior center, and he's met all these people, and he's come out of his shell. He's not an extrovert, but he's become one in a way. And so that's been so cool to see him take care of himself in a way that he never did before. Yeah. Like, he has all his doctor's appointments all in a row, and he's following up, he's making sure his meds are right, he's doing the thing. He got a hearing aid a couple of years ago, or a year and a half ago, which changed everything because he was just like, we were repeating ourselves so much. He gets this hearing aid. He's like, oh. And I read a story about this that I may have talked about on the podcast, but you are 300% more likely to develop dementia if you have hearing loss. Yeah. Because it's so isolating. Yeah. And so there's all this other stuff that goes on. I don't know if it's correlation or causation, but it's very interesting study that they did. So it really has changed his life. And now, so I cut to today's story, which is my dad, his hearing aid's fine, but he only hears out of one ear because the other one he had a surgery on when he was 14. And it was back when they didn't do tubes and stuff. Yeah. Because it was like the 40s or 50s. So he just has like this hole in the back of his ear for drainage, and he hasn't heard out of the ear in his whole, existence past age 14, I think it was. So...
It's like It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah, right. So you always have to sit on the correct side of Dad, you know, or he's just like, what? You talk to him for a whole 20 minutes and he goes, what did you say? And you go, oh boy, I was sitting on the wrong side. Right. So now with the hearing aid, he can do better because he can kind of pick up things if you're even on the wrong side of him. But they have this hearing aid because of like this, whatever it's called, jawbone conduction they can do with you've seen the headphones like this now that don't go in your ears, they go on the side or whatever, on the back. They can use that for hearing aids now. So literally... My dad today is picking up a hearing aid that he's getting for himself, and it's pretty affordable. It will simulate stereo sound. For the first time. He's basically going to be able to hear out of his left ear for the first time since he was 14. Wow. And I'm just like, first of all, medical science, amazing.
Yeah.
And secondly, like that he would go, I need to go do this. This is good, but it could be better. Let's go do that. Like you go Dad. I'm so proud of him.
That's great.
Yeah. And that's what I want to be. So he's my hero. I want to be that. I want to be like still fighting and advocating for yourself at 84.
You say that, but we got into this conversation for how you were completely not fighting or advocating for yourself.
Well, I don't feel like somebody who will be that.
But you feel like you should be.
Well, here's why. You talk about your 92-year-old grandmother.
Yeah.
I don't have that. I don't have the family history that says, like, Johnny's going to be 92 kicking around.
Oh, come on.
John, I mean, I can change. I'm changing some things. Look.
Hey, man.
I mean, I did have the chicken tenders today.
Yeah, well, that's true.
And fries.
Yeah.
I'm doing the right things.
I'm having chicken tender and fries at least 3 times a week.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. I don't know why I don't feel better. But yeah, I mean that you go from that thing and you talk about like, how you feel in adolescence. You feel so out of control, and then you start to feel some sense of control, and then as you start aging, you feel like you lose that same control. It's almost like you go back to an adolescent thing where you just feel like your body is turning on you in a way.
Yeah, and
I just feel like fighting for yourself and advocating for yourself and striving to have the best. It just shows the will to live that's so strong in us,
Yeah, it's the will.
There are people who give up, and I get that. And sometimes it's just life just beats you down, and there's no. I'm not. That does happen, but it's been cool to watch him in a lot of ways. Like he's still ornery too, and he's a curmudgeon. Yeah. So there's that there too, and I'll have that for sure.
Well, of course,
I've already got that.
That's the fun part.
I got that down.
I do get called a curmudgeon in my house.
Do you think you're going to be a get off my lawn guy?
I don't know. Depends on what they're mowing it. No.
I mean, as it stands, you're not exactly a welcome to my lawn guy.
You don't know what I am.
You're like come on over, check out the lawn. I watched a video yesterday, and it was so funny, and it was just this guy who does these face to camera, like he plays all the characters.
Yeah.
And he's playing 3 characters in the video.
Yeah.
And it's the guy. It starts out with a guy going, "You guys got to come to the lake house this summer. You got to come up." Which we all know that guy.
Right.
And then the one guy goes, "Let's do it. When?" And he goes, "I'm going to be there all summer, just grilling. It's coming on up." And then the one guy goes, "I love the lake house." Like he's the really excited guy. And then it keeps cutting back to the one guy going, "When? Give me a date." He goes, "Man, love the lake house. Where is it?" He goes, "It's right over there by the lake. Come on up." And it was so funny because it's true. Like we all do that with each other.
Right.
Whether you mean to or not, you go, we got to get lunch. We got to get together. We got to do the thing.
When could you?
Guys, come on, man. We got the pool. We got the thing. And you go, when? Yeah. When are we ever going to do this?
Hey, and that's why I had you to my pool.
You did. You had me to your pool. I've yet to get in your pool, though.
You never gotten in. You didn't even wear swimming trunks. You showed up in shoes.
Yeah, I could have just. Well, I'm not going to. I'm going to take the shoes off.
But people come in flip flops when you come to the pool.
I don't really do flip flops, John.
Not even like sandals around the.
No. I just take it off, and it is a pasty white foot under there too, because I've never done the sandals.
It's like you're wearing your own white sock. It is.
It's like a cadaver foot under there.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah,
it's not pretty. So
it's not good.
But it was fun having you. You know what else was fun, Johnny?
What?
Hearing from our sponsors. You never know what they might say. Let's take a moment and hear what just may come out of their advertisements. I think it was the best segue I ever had.
Shouldn't it be? That was really fumbly. Shouldn't it be advertisements?
Advertisements. It's one fell swoop. No, you came over.
Yeah.
But you didn't get to stay. Well, you had to stay long.
Yeah.
We didn't really have a big thing this year.
One felled swoop would be like if Corey Feldman did his autobiography.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, it could be the one felled.
We just gave it away.
One felled swoop.
Yeah, because this is
he
all.
Explains his life in one felled swoop.
Everyone listening is under an NDA right now.
Yeah, because if we're gonna listen, we're gonna call Corey.
That's right.
Any Corey, really.
Just pick one.
There's a lot of Corys in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah,
remember that was very popular. What happened to all the Corys?
I know there's a Corey at church plays bass.
Okay.
And he would
Corey played bass. Okay, sorry. I always think about the names, how they change, and now we're early 2000s. It just feels like we're going to have a Senator Bryson. We're going to have a Senator.
Yeah, we are.
We're going to have a Senator Schuyler.
Right.
It's coming.
Yeah.
And can we?
A Senator Hudson.
Are we ready for that?
Yeah. Yeah, it's happening. I don't know if we are. So, yeah.
Because it'll funny because like Senator Schuyler, Senator Kyler, Senator. I mean, there's like. Yeah, they all have the same. It's like one letter off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Aiden, Jaden, Caden.
Right. Excuse me, Mr. Speaker. I feel that this resolution slaps. And
I'm not Aiden, I'm Jaden. Yeah.
how could you get that wrong? Hey, Johnny, it's about that time.
Oh.
It's time for
some sage words.
Oh my goodness. And it's time for They Talked About That. By the way, our friend Jake, who's our student director,
Yes.
After waiting almost 2 years on a transplant list, got his kidney transplant.
Beautiful.
It's been an interesting week. I thought of that because I had to lead worship because his wife, Abby, is our worship director.
Right.
So he's doing well. They're home now. And yeah, but thank God.
Doing great.
Yeah.
It's doing great so far, and it's good.
Yeah, it's great. If you're on our church email, there's a place you could donate or you could do like a meal train, like send food and stuff. So I think if you go to our service at church@pleasantgrove.com, we put it into the main service.
Yeah, do that. If you're listening, that would be a great way to help Jake out and encourage them.
Yeah, they're doing well. Pray
He's
for Jake.
a fighter, man. That's been a journey, man, to be in your 20s and going through what they went through.
Yeah.
So they're amazing people.
Yep. I get a daily C.S. Lewis quote, so a lot of C.S. Lewis things come through because it just always strikes me. But it actually is pretty helpful, I think, for the topics we've already had today, Johnny.
Okay.
C.S. Lewis. Never, in peace or war, commit your virtue or your happiness to the future. Happy work is best done by the man who takes his long-term plans somewhat lightly and works from moment to moment, quote, as to the Lord. It is only our daily bread that we are encouraged to ask for. The present is the only time in which any duty can be done or any grace received. It was that last line that really got me. The present is the only time in which any duty can be done or any grace received. And so that idea for me of how much, again, you and I were talking this week because you were talking me through some areas of my life that I'm struggling with. Yeah.
Deep sin that John is in.
Oh my goodness. Yes. And they're
it's a bonus episode for the patrons.
That's right. We're going to have to up that patron ask for that. But it's a worry about the future or a trying to position well for the family for the future, whether it's financial things or, most of or things that you want to be in control of. And so you've been really helpful to remind me of truth and those things. But man, that idea of I can't receive grace tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right. Because I'm not there yet. And I can receive grace for yesterday, but I can't receive it yesterday. Mm-hmm. Right. The only time I can really accomplish anything, and I know this sounds like cliche, we're so Instagram meme driven right now in culture that sometimes the really good stuff gets dismissed with a bunch of other stuff. We're overwhelmed by it.
Yeah.
But man, the present is the only time in which duty can be done or any grace can be received. Man, that idea of, am I there today? In fact, when I was going through 12-step recovery and worry, one of the things I'm constantly in recovery from, I remember writing this, and I'm going to, it sounds to the normal, just like evangelical ear as something different than what I mean. So I'll have to explain it a little bit. But I ended up writing like, hey, worry is not responsibility. Mm-hmm. It's sin. Worry is not responsibility. It's sin. Like it was a really strong statement. Like I was way into the steps into my year journey. And by sin, we all go, oh my gosh, you mean like you've done, like we make sin almost always this overt thing I do against God, as if I don't do this overt thing, that I'm not in sin. And so we don't really recognize a state of brokenness or sinfulness, or that like sin just means missing the target in its literal translation of the words. But we almost assume like if we're not doing something that we put on some list, right? Yeah. If we're not, cussing out our neighbor or whatever, that I'm okay, I'm not in sin today, as opposed to I literally live in a world of sin. Like there's not a day that I'm, not missing a target in some way. And worry is one of those big places for me. And generally worry is about either the past or the future. Yeah. But in the present is where life is really lived. And so that's just what was crazy is as Enneagram 6 and my wife is a 2, we're both actually there's something called a time orientation to each type. we're actually both present time oriented, which makes us good problem solvers. So like if there's a crisis today or there's a responsibility or something has to get done, we're the kind of get stuff done kind of people, you know? But man, when I slip into that worry state, it's usually of how to take what's happening today and sustain it for the future. And that goes back to what you said, the daily bread. You know, the manna was not allowed to be stored.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking when you were talking about that grace for today.
Yep.
Because it's like, it's why it's called daily bread. It's like you're not supposed to hoard it. It's for today. Yeah.
Even when you and I were talking the other day, or I was talking to a friend about, and we're at the age now, you talk about 401ks and retirement accounts and stuff and plans, and you meet with your financial advisor and where will it be whenever I'm 50 or where will it be when I'm 55? And you go through those things. I can't help but think about that story in the Bible about the guy who builds the barns. And he has this great harvest, and then he tears down his old barns because it's not enough, and he builds these huge new ones, and he stuffs them full of all this stuff. And he just basically says, you know, hey, soul, you've done well for yourself. Now just delight yourself in this abundance. And that the Lord's like, hey, it's a foolish thing to think that because actually your soul's required of you today.
Yeah.
Meaning like, you know, I always call that guy Barney when I preach on that since we don't know his name, but he built barns. But like, it's just easy to do. I don't think it's, you can help me because I struggle. I don't think it's wrong to think about the future or be wise in the stewardship of it. But it's like what Paul said, tell the rich in this present age, don't put your trust in the uncertainty of those things.
Yeah. Or like we're all really what we're trying to do. If you strip it down, when I think about myself and when I've become in that mindset, it's like, what am I doing? And what I think I'm doing is, I'm trying to get enough of something to insulate myself from suffering in the future.
Yeah.
If I could just do this. But I think it's to your point about accessing God's grace for each day, the reason it's not supposed to be hoarded is because he wants us accessing it each day. In other words, if I had a friendship with you and I go, man, it was great lunch. I'll see you again in 2 years.
Right.
Because, man, that conversation was rich enough that we're going to be close for 2 years based on that. You would never be friends with that person.
No.
That's not friendship.
Right.
We need to be close. If we're going to be close, that means you're going to be calling, hey, man, how are things? Hey, I heard about this. Hey, I'm going to come visit you here. Or just touching base with somebody.
Yeah.
So, like, a relationship is accessing something daily. And so, but in our minds, we would never think that. But we do think that about money, or we think it about spiritual things. We just go, we're all set. I'm good.
Yep.
That'll tide me over. And it's like, it's not built to tide you over.
No.
Yeah.
No, and dependency is the state we're supposed to live in. It's John 15, right? The vine and the branches, abiding, remaining, not being severed. And I don't think that's a salvation thing. I really, really don't think that. Jesus is speaking to disciples. I think it's a functionality thing. Because what he says is apart from me, you can do nothing. So there is a how you're going to conduct your life sort of implication to that. But we sort of preach it only as apart from me. It's a very much, you were in the vine and now you've fallen away. It's all about sort of all or nothing, heaven or hell kind of thing, as opposed to seeing, I think, for what Jesus's context was more of, as you walk out this thing now that we have, you have to keep walking, to your point, with me every day.
Well, even the money thing, when you think about, like, if I go to the root of it, I go, well, I just want to have enough to where I don't have to depend on people to take care of me. Okay, well, that's a noble goal in and of itself. But if you dig really down deep as far as, like, what is the pathology of that?
Yeah.
Are you afraid of depending on somebody else? Like, that's where it can get unhealthy.
Yeah.
Like, if your worst fear is, like, I might have to ask for help, then that's an issue.
Yeah.
If you're literally like, I'm just going to get as much money so I don't need anybody.
Yeah.
And that's your only goal. It's not about, it's about, I think what we should be going for as Christians is interdependence, not necessarily independence. Like, we think independence is so great.
Yeah.
And I think that there's something to be said for, like, being prepared.
Right.
Not just living your life as wasteful as you can. But I think sometimes we're afraid to love wastefully. There's a friend of mine, Derek Tennant, who's a comedian, and that's his slogan on all of his stuff is love wastefully. He talks about, like, giving every bit of yourself to something. And I think if we go in by the capitalist mindset and we just live in that and make that our creed, instead of just like, well, we live in a capitalist country, I don't believe capitalism is evil in and of itself. Okay, that's one thing. But when we just go like, no, this is my religion now. It's supply and demand, and it's be independent. Make something of yourself. Okay, well, that's okay. All those things are fine. How far down the rabbit hole are you willing to go? And is your worst fear that you might need something from your neighbor? You want to be the one giving to your neighbor. And is that pride? Like, I want to be the one that they got to come to me.
Yeah.
Like, you just got to go, like, how far are you going with it to where it can become a bad thing?
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, one could argue anything that is the source of your security is an idol or is a god, little g, unto you. Because, vulnerability, we love the idea of authenticity and vulnerability and genuineness, and these are all the sort of buzzwords. But like you said, we generally still want to maintain a sense of control over that. What we want is other people to be that way towards us. Us to be that way towards them, we want it to come natural, like I chose it. But I think the most effectively broken places that I've ever been in my life were when I didn't have a choice. Like I woke in those places because of circumstance. And now, having been forced to this place, there is a choice now, but I can either give in to that. I am this weak, I am this destroyed, and I have nothing to stand on, and all I have to do is to reach out for help.
Yeah.
As opposed to we just think we're going to just choose it one day. Just become more vulnerable. We miss those, like, that was a gift. I mean, I didn't choose it, but those kinds of moments actually teach you about that so that hopefully you can live more intentionally in that state. But we miss the opportunity that a moment where the money's not going well brings, right?
Yeah.
Or a moment when the health is not going well brings. That there is again, I've been writing a movie about a young man who passed away of cancer, and that's what he talked about. Like when he got, again, we said it last week, I think, but his second diagnosis was now an opportunity, which sounds crazy to say. Just, I mean, who says that? Because it's a person who had learned the first time what it meant to be weak or to be dependent. And so, yes, you wouldn't choose it. You're hoping it changes. But while you're in it, can you lean on others and live in the present? Receive the grace that can only be received today. Anyway, yeah. Oh, CS, man.
That guy, he's going somewhere.
You know what? If he keeps trying.
I think he's going to go full-time as a theologian if he stays with it.
Maybe. They got good 403Bs if you do that.
Yeah.
That's a retirement account for ministers. Sorry.
Wonder what his honorarium was to speak at a place.
That's a great question.
What does C.S. Lewis get to come speak at your...
Probably nothing.
Your whatever.
Most of the great speakers I really do know,
yeah,
they're just like, well, whatever you want to do. You know what I'm saying? I bet that was C.S. Lewis.
Meanwhile, I'm making six figures to come tell my dumb jokes, John. Every show I go, this is what it is. And I slide a number to them and they go,
wow, this 6
Johnny,
figures.
this is...
And you're like, yeah, but with decimals.
No, it's... John, I tell you, it's...
6 figures a
it's
show.
It's going pretty good out here. I haven't booked anything.
Right. You're just waiting for that one.
Right.
So that one guy that sold his book.
You can set your fee, though, and...
How to make $2 million off of a book.
Yeah.
And he's put...
There's just one available.
For $2 million. I love it. Yeah.
One book available. John, it's time to go back. This week, I want to do Johnny's old joke of the week. I love the slide whistle. Okay, or the swide whistle.
The swide whistle.
It's even funnier. Okay, so I wanted to because we highlighted Henny Youngman last week, which I had a loyal listener kind of reach out and say, like, that was really cool. I love Henny Youngman, and that was kind of cool. By the way, he was in Goodfellas, if you've ever seen Goodfellas. He plays himself because he used to do all those shows at the Catskill Mountains. That was the Borscht Belt kind of comedy where the Russian and Jewish immigrants, and it became a certain style of delivering comedy. So Henny Youngman. So this week I wanted to focus a little bit because there's an old street joke I was thinking about today.
Okay.
And the reason I first heard it was because of the show Welcome Back, Kotter. Now, we're 5 years apart.
Yeah, I didn't get into that.
Welcome Back, Kotter was like mid to late 70s. It's where John Travolta first became famous.
Yeah.
And he was one of the students. So basically, it's this group of students called the Sweat Hogs. That was their little, they're like underperforming students, let's just say that.
Okay.
In one of the boroughs of New York. And he's their teacher, their favorite teacher, Mr. Kotter. And Mr. Kotter was played by a guy named Gabe Kaplan, who was a Jewish comic, an actor. But he would do stand-up, too. And so one of the things he would do as his character was him and his wife, it would sometimes start the show and sometimes end the show, but they would, and I love this so much because we just passed my wife's birthday, and I was thinking about this yesterday, that my favorite thing to do is make my wife laugh. I think anybody that's married, making your spouse laugh. But it's very important for men to be considered funny by their wives. You know, if your wife's rolling her eyes the whole time, you're like, oh boy, she's, you make your wife laugh. It's very special.
It is.
So they start the show a lot of times before they go to the credits, or at the end credits, the last scene sometimes of these shows. Every episode would be him telling his wife an old Borscht Belt or Jewish joke or street joke. And so I remember watching this show as a kid, and some of these jokes were so funny that I was like, I remember one that he told on one of the episodes, and now it's a pretty famous joke, so you may have even heard it before. But the joke goes, I'll tell my version of it. So these people they go out on vacation, and they have this neighbor kid watch their cat. Okay?
All right.
They come back, or they call home. They say, hey, how are things going? Things are good here at the beach, but how are things going there? And the neighbor kid goes, the cat died. And the guy goes, hey, don't do that. He goes, what do you mean? He goes, that's not how you tell somebody that their cat died. You got to break it to them in pieces. You say, how's things going? How's the cat? You go, well, she's on the roof. She won't come down. And then the next time I call, hey, how is the cat? She fell off the roof. She's in the hospital. And then the next time I call, you go, the cat didn't make it. That's how you do it. You break it to them in pieces so I have a chance to adjust, and I can tell this to my wife in segments. And they would go, okay. They go on vacation a week later, or a year later. A year later, they go on vacation again. And they let the same neighbor kid watch the house. They call home, hey, how are things at the house? And the neighbor kid says, your mother's on the roof and she won't come down. It's great. But because of that joke, literally that is a theory in intercommunicational theory that sometimes people train their people on, how to deliver bad news to somebody. If you've got to fire somebody, if you've got to reprimand somebody, don't give them more than they can bite off at once. And it sounds like you're being deceptive, but it's also this thing that's really and it's evolved all from that joke. Literally, they call it cat on the roof. It's a style of leadership.
Wow.
I don't know if you've ever experienced anything like that, where I know you've had to do that before. You've had to fire people, or you've had to give people terrible news or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And you don't want to be deceptive, but you also be like, can they handle this right now?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I don't know. That's interesting.
Are you getting ready to give me bad news? You're like, this is so interesting. You should bring this up.
You bring that up. Yeah. That's what makes this
Curry's
hard.
on the roof and she won't come down.
Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those. Usually at the real bad news, I don't think, again, there's any way around it for me. You know what I'm saying? But
that's true. You're probably more of a just tell them the truth and let's tear the Band-Aid off. And,
well, what else are you going to do? Because they're going to find out.
By the way, I think it's interesting they call it tearing the Band-Aid off when a doctor would never tell you to just tear a Band-Aid off because it's got dried blood and you know what I'm saying? You don't just tear a Band-Aid off.
No.
You slowly peel a Band-Aid off to be careful that you're not tearing a existing scab or...
Maybe
you would just be like, hey, tear that Band-Aid off. Well, now I'm pouring blood again.
I think that's the point. Sometimes if you go slow, it hurts worse.
Sometimes you're supposed to pour blood?
No, well, Johnny, how brittle is your skin?
I got a lot of problems, John. No, I'm saying the Band-Aid's on an existing wound. You want to make sure that wound is not...
Yeah, but the Band-Aid shouldn't be... The adhesive should not be touching the wound, Johnny. I don't think you know.
Listen, but sometimes it sticks because of the non-stick pad. Sometimes it's sticky. Won't this preach?
Come on now.
Some of y'all...
Your Band-Aid's
Some of y'all got wounds.
And it's bleeding because
you're bleeding all over your friends because you tore the Band-Aid too quick. You needed to tell them the cat was on the roof.
Or, in Johnny's case, you didn't know how to apply a Band-Aid properly.
You put the sticky side on the...
You stick a sticky side right on the bleeding part.
Are you supposed to lick these and just hold it? That's what I thought. Sterile. It's a total sterile. Anyway, if you don't know... Listen, I would urge you, go find an old episode of Welcome Back, Kotter, because I think you'd find it very charming.
Okay.
And if you... I know some people that listen are older, some people are younger. It's a great, old television show. I think it ran 5 or 6 seasons. Welcome Back, Kotter. It's about a guy who grew up in... the Bronx or whatever, and then he goes off, lives his life. He comes back to teach kids who were like him because he was kind of a roughneck when he was a kid.
Yeah.
So that's why it's called Welcome Back, Kotter. So
nice.
He's kind of anyway.
Yeah.
It's a good show, and it's not his joke, but I wanted to kind of leverage him, shoehorn him in, because I don't know who wrote the joke. It's one of those kind of jokes.
I like it.
So
You did good.
If you're out there trying to give bad news, just give it to them.
Just tell them.
Yeah. John, let's go all the way back now.
All right.
This week in history, we call it Talk About Then. John, in 1993, this week, Gary Hoy, which sounds like a made-up name.
Yeah.
He liked to demonstrate the tensile strength of his building's windows by running up against them and bouncing off, a stunt he'd performed numerous times. However, on this fateful day, the window glass popped out of the frame and Hoy plummeted to his death of the 24th story of the Toronto Dominion Bank Tower.
Wow.
Earning him what's called a Darwin Award in 1996. It's when people die in silly ways, or they die in, like, you could have avoided that kind of ways. They call it a Darwin Award. His unusual death has been featured on TV shows Mythbusters and 1,000 Ways to Die. Oh, Mythbusters did this. So they were trying to see, what would the window frame pop out? So yeah, if you're like, hey, these are, one of my favorite stories about popular culture as far as like industry was the Otis elevator company. And whatever his name, I think his last name was Otis. He would demonstrate his emergency braking system of his elevators by going to a building that had just installed them. He would stand in the elevator and then he would signal someone above to cut the cables. Wow. Because when they cut the cables, his emergency braking system would immediately engage on the bars and it would stop him from falling. He would fall like 6 inches. It would grab. Yeah. Kind of like a seatbelt, when you get the force on it. And, he was, that would make the papers. It was a way to get his. So that's why when you get into an elevator, almost every one of them, if you look at the little plate on them, they say Otis. It's because that spectacle of him doing that, and the fact that they were well-made quality products, but I'm saying like that eye-popping demonstration was part of the reason his company grew.
Fascinating.
And here's this guy going, well, I'll go you one better. My windows are so, and it didn't work out. So sometimes you got to know when you're Otis, and sometimes you got to know when you're not an Otis. Don't be out there trying to be an Otis when you're
what's the guy's name?
Hoy.
Don't be a Hoy, be an Otis.
Yeah. If I could tell you anything.
Yeah.
Don't open with that. Don't be a Hoy, because people are like, that doesn't make any sense to me. You got to tell the whole story.
You got to get.
And as you remember, it was a long story. John, the first successful heart surgery was this week in 1893. An African-American doctor, Daniel Hale Williams, sutured the heart of a stabbing victim at a Chicago hospital. It was performed at Chicago's Providence Hospital, which he founded in 1891 as the first non-segregated hospital in the United States. I did not know that.
Unbelievable.
So the first successful heart surgery was performed by an African-American doctor in 1893. Wow. John, this week, 1911, John Archibald Wheeler was born. He was an American theoretical physicist. He popularized the term black hole, 1967, which is a collapsed star. And he coined the term wormhole in 1957, which is a shortcut connecting two separate points in space-time. Those have both stayed into our, even if you're just talking about it as you're not talking specifically about a wormhole or a black hole, you just say, this whole, this line item on our budget's a black hole, meaning everything's getting sucked into it and we can't seem to get out of it. Right, it's a black hole. Or out here in basketball, God, that guy's a black hole. You throw him the ball, it's never coming out. He's not passing it back, Right. And wormhole, we talk about all the time. God, I got to find a wormhole, meaning like I can't get enough time in my day. I need a wormhole to finish everything I need to get done today. This guy coined both of those.
Unbelievable.
And were actual theoretical physicist terms. I didn't know a wormhole actually was like something that people believed existed, but evidently he believes in it. He believed in it at the time. I don't know if it's have we disproven wormholes? Do you believe time travel's possible, John? Do we have enough time left in the show to get into your belief?
I'm living in the present is what
That's true.
Said. Yeah.
That's what he would say. Don't go looking for a wormhole.
Don't look for a wormhole.
There's no grace in the wormhole.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you go to another time.
Some would say looking for the grace in the wormhole is a black hole.
Boy, come on, guys.
Huh?
That's Johnny's book title.
Did you see how I pulled it all together?
I saw it.
In one felled...
Okay.
That's what you call a double. That's a double callback.
Yeah.
John, finally, this week... Oh, by the way, I forgot the last quote for the John Archibald Wheeler was his quote from this guy who invented these two terms and was a theoretical physicist. He said, and you'll love this, if you haven't found something strange during the day, it hasn't been much of a day.
Oh.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Hey, so don't go to sleep until you go, well, that was weird.
Yeah.
Don't lay your head down on the pillow unless something's happened that you go, that was odd.
That's... Every week on the podcast, I feel like that.
Thank you.
There you go.
I guess. I don't know if that was a compliment or not. John, finally this week, 1952, John Tesh was born.
Oh.
He was an American entertainer, Emmy-winning composer. I remember Entertainment Tonight. That was my favorite. You know, da-da-da-da-ba-ba, which he might have written. I need to look that up. But you know what his most famous composition is? John Tesh.
I do know this, and I can't think of it.
It's called Round Ball Rock, and we heard it every day, every weekend during the NBA and NBC. The
For basketball. He wrote that? I thought John Williams wrote that.
Nope, it's John Tesh. And here's the best part about it.
Oh my God.
Because he's done a TED Talk about this before, about creativity. Because he's a very good composer. He's not just like a guy who like composes on the side. Like he does concerts with huge symphonies, and he's very good. So how he had this thing come to him, and he called his answering machine at home from his whatever, his cell phone on the road or whatever, from payphone. I don't know when it would have been. It would have been the late 80s. And he recited this thing in his head that was kind of an earworm. And that's how so when he got home that he could start composing it. And that was called Round Ball Rock. And yeah.
Wow.
So, anyway.
By the way, I do believe that the Entertainment Tonight
was composed
theme.
Yeah.
No, sorry. Awesome arrangement of Michael Mark's Entertainment Tonight theme. The Entertainment Tonight host. Wait.
But he was on there, right, with Mary Hart.
He was. Yeah. I see Round Ball Rock.
Mm-hmm.
But did he write?
I don't think he did. But it does sound like it's in his wheelhouse. Let's give him credit.
Let's just tell him.
But that means we're taking credit from this other person who did write it.
And no, it's fine.
We don't play those games.
No, I do play those games.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's fine. I will allow it.
We need to play some round ball. That's what we need to play.
Johnny,
the next time we play basketball, we need to make sure that in the background is
oh, dude, I'd be dunking.
Then it takes you back. It's one of those things where music is so tied to memories, which is one of the reasons that as we age, we've stopped listening to new music. And so those nostalgic bonds just get so much stronger because you've not ingested a ton of new music. You just think new music is not good and your music was the best music. So when you hear like an old Bob Seger song, you're like, it takes you a minute. You go, there I was in the back of the pickup. I remember the exact moment. I remember the smell in the air. I remember all of it. And it's amazing. So yeah, you're right. If somebody played Round Ball Rock, I can remember every Saturday, in my backyard. Oh, it's back on. I'd run back in to see the Laker game or whatever. Yep. It's wild. And John Tesh gave us all that.
Man, thank you, John Tesh.
Yeah. He's a good man. He's a very tall person. I think he's 6'7".
John Talsh.
Yeah, he is very tall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's very tall.
John Talsh.
I feel like I learned a lot today, Johnny.
I think so too. We're not technically an educational podcast, but I feel like we're getting there. We're getting more there. And the reason I want to say that we're not educational is because there's probably a lot of misinformation.
Yeah.
Because we're guessing on some of this. I've done some research, but then we just go, let's go into the weeds.
I wouldn't go as far as to call us fake news.
Right.
But I wouldn't call us real news either. You know what I'm saying? I don't know what the in-between is of that.
Yeah. It's like we're cubic zirconia. Like we're actually real in that it's a real thing.
Yeah.
It's not a hologram, but it's not a diamond either.
No.
We're a zircon.
As long as you don't tell your wife that you're giving her a real diamond, it'll be fine.
Right. Don't let her take it to get it appraised.
No. Do not let her do that.
If this show was to get appraised, no good.
Come on, we give all appraisal to God.
John, how would you become a patron of the show if you wanted to support the show?
That's a great question, Johnny, and I was completely surprised by it. But you go to talkaboutthatpodcast.com.
All the archived episodes are there. Click on that upper right-hand link. That's how you support the show. Get ad-free content. The lower right-hand little voice bubble, that's how you send us a message if you want to. Or you can just send us an email at hello@talkaboutthatpodcast.com.
Yeah, you should check out Jonnie W too, JONNIEW.com. Or go follow him on socials. He's a great follow. Lots of tour dates, lots of cool videos coming out all the time. Jonnie W, man, he's worth the follow and worth going to the show.
Thank you. Cincinnati, July 28th. Got a big show. My buddy Sean Reynolds is going to come open that show. You can get tickets still on my website, JonnieW.com.
Again, come for the comedy, stay for the Skyline Chili.
Oh, yeah. Beautiful.
That'd be great. Hey, guys, send us your questions, your comments, things you want to hear us talk about. And don't forget to leave that review, that 5-star review, man, and say what you like about the show so other people can find it. But thanks for joining us every week. Hey, let's do it again next week here on
Talk About That.